Hey, good morning, and welcome to the Comics Experience Graphic Novel of the Month Club for December of 2024. That makes this the very, very, very last show of the year. Wow. But then we're going to have another show in 2 weeks for the new year, so it'll all work out. We've got a really good book here and a really, really good creative team here today for your comics enjoyment conversation. And the book is We Called Them Giants. And we're joined by KIERON Gillen and Stephanie Hans. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Hello.
Excellent. Good to see you guys. So yeah, great book. I really like it. I really think that you guys are just a fantastic team. The way you work together. For those of you who don't know at home, they also did Die. These 4 volumes of Die there, which was another goddamn great series. Yeah, so I'm really happy to have you guys here to talk about making comics and things. So let's actually start with the first question. And the first question is the same on every show because I think it kind of gets to sort of the point of what we're trying to do here. And it's why comics? Of all the things that you could be doing, you're both clearly very talented at writing and art. But comics are a very strange little business. You work really hard for them. You don't necessarily make a ton of money necessarily. And you could probably be doing something else that would, but so what is it about comics that speaks to you, that thrills you, that excites your soul? What's that thing?
Brian, you saying me like that made me think. Actually, I'm out. I'm leaving comics right now.
Are you?
No, Joe. Stephanie, you go first. You take it.
Oh yeah, I guess my answer is going to be shorter than yours. I always wanted to do illustration for adults. There are not a lot of places where you can do that. Comics is a very good place if you want to have. Also, if you have a mainstream kind of brain like I do. Also, I always really loved the idea that my work could be somewhere folded in the back pocket of somebody on a train. There is something very in the life of people, to be really included. I love art, and I have people in my life that are like proper contemporary artists. I have a lot of respect for what they do, but I always regret that they don't have a wider way to show their art. And for me, I really want my work to talk to as many people as I can. So comics is a really good way for me to do this.
Yeah, that makes sense. KIERON, would you like to chime in?
It's tricky because I was actually. This is obviously a question I think about quite a bit and then talk about from different angles. But I was just going for a walk with one of my friends I used to be in bands with back in the day. Like went to university together, we formed bands, and he was the last band I was in, and I split because I can't. It's like I really want to be creative as a thing. I want this to be my life, and these people aren't as serious as I am, and I'm going to be a writer instead. So I concentrated on writing, and then I found myself back into a medium which, for me as a writer, is fundamentally collaborative. So there's something about comics being in a band. It's like that's the end. It's something me and Stephanie have an intense relationship. You create something between us, and you're both the audience of the work, but you get to be both as a part of the work, but you're also the audience of your work. It's not just you, and there's something magical there. Like I love writing prose, but the prose is just you in the page. And comics is something bigger than you. At the same time, it's also a small enough creative unit that it is yours. It's not like working in film where you pretend the director's in charge of everything, and that's not true. And there's so many other people, there's so much money. It's me and Stephanie and Clayton against the world.
Yeah.
Or at least taking something to the world. Something really appealing there. And I was a late convert to comics. I read comics a bit as a kid, but I came in hard in my 20s, and I came in at 25 and was basically went from I like this to going to Comic Cons, wrote my first script on my first con when I came back in the evening. And then the year after that, I was publishing a black and white zine, so there's a bit of that. As in I came in late and I came in hard, and it's kind of magical, that aspect. What you get to do is suits my brain as well, in terms of the amount of time it takes to write a script. It's how it's modular. and I like it being an underdog medium. Like, who would write a novel? Like, it's cultural. Who would do a movie? It's the cultural winners. Let's fight uphill. So there's a kind of perverseness to me as well. But like, I could go on, and I really all would. In fact, I could go on, and I kind of have. It's and also like, come on, look what you do, Brian. The idea that comics is a medium as small as it is, while it has a worldwide string of small devoted shops solely designed to serve that. Like bookshops don't really have that. Record shops that died as much. You know what I mean? The idea that comics, being a medium as it is, has something that is as bespoke seems kind of precious. The older I get, the more I find that kind of appealing, especially in the age of social media and the various corporations basically owning the concept of everything. Comic shops are a thing and probably worth actually. Sorry, I sound like I'm sucking up to you now, Brian. But you know what I mean? Like
no. I believe me, dude. I agree with everything of that last part that you said. What I kind of find fascinating is just how many people who are in comics as the audience seem to think that the comic book stores are the worst part of comics, right? That there's something wrong with comics, that it's not a wider medium.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's like, I think sometimes you see the advantages. I mean, the grass is always greener is the real thing. And if anybody who works primarily in the book trade also sees the problem with that as well. So that it's the aspirational aspect. But like, I think especially in the last 15 years I think when I came into comics, I thought I'd be doing mainly OGNs. I think that's how my head was. And the longer I've been in comics, the more I've come around to it, because I've seen the way mass culture have gone. And the idea of like, me and Stephanie and Clayton doing something like this is kind of precious. And it's not many contexts you get to do that in. It's often like, because there's always an art argument, and there's always a business argument. These all things interlink, and that's kind of, how can we work out a way for Stephanie to eat for a year to do this work? That's the hard math of like being a working creative. Because as you say, Stephanie could be doing something else, but finding a way to do Stephanie to do what she loves and to sit there and make worlds on paper, that involves some math. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I can, then let's talk a little bit about the math of an OGN versus that serialization and then collection. It strikes me, particularly when you have a success, and I think Die was a success. The serialization is paying for the cost of making the product all the way through the life, and then when you finally get to the books, and then eventually you get like a big fancy hardcover. I didn't bring it over from the shelf, but I have one. Then all of that money is essentially free money. I'm putting scare quotes around free. There. That's the. Yours is still in the shrink wrap though.
Yeah. These are my comps.
Thank you.
Yeah. But then on an OGN, right? Like you only really get one shot at it.
Yeah.
So how does the math work from your point of view on that?
It's okay. Phrases. It's always experimental. So it's one of those things like, if you look at like it's the DC smaller format, they can charge $10 because A, format, but B, they've already made the money several times on those books. And this is kind of like, oh right, no, it's a single volume. You get the one leading forward. So in some ways, experimental. As in, does it justify itself? And like the order's been great. We haven't got the numbers yet in terms of the actual breakdowns, but numbers have been good. So you think, okay, $20, it's about 100 pages. It's basically 5 issues. So it's kind of like, it's 5 issues. So it's kind of close to the money, but you're asking it in a single go. So there's some math in your head. You go, okay, if it orders as much as the last issue, it's probably making as much money or more. You know what I mean? Like, because everyone talks about issue 1 sales. What's really interesting in the industry is issue 5, because that's where things start really mattering.
Absolutely.
So like the math in that way, like you may be giving up the issue 1 spike, but there's other stuff there. And what you kind of hope you gain, it's an aesthetic thing. Like the story you could have broke this down to 5 issues or 4 and a bit issues, but like it would have been broken its back. The idea of, okay, we can write for once in my career, I'll write a story to this space and Stephanie can do it in one go and think about it as a whole flow and without, because I know, I'm somebody who loves writing single issues, but the idea of, okay, what can you do with a space and not warp the story? Because like, if you actually look at if you look at the book, you'll probably see where I would have broke the issues, But like it was, oh no, this issue's 16 page, this issue's 30 pages, and with that, it can hopefully give you a richer and more natural story. And also, you're not forced to the point where issue 1 has to have that incredible over the top must buy. I remember like one advice from like quite a major comic writer is that you put all your best stuff in issue 1 because that's what sets the orders. And there must be like I can't go that because that breaks the story. I'm interested in doing a good story all along, but not having to think about that all. In the same way, like a movie is different from television. In television, you really need to keep people not turning off. In a movie, at least to some degree, you've got them for 2 hours. They've paid, so you can do a story that respects their time and takes them on a journey. So that's kind of the thing. As an artistic thing, it was worth doing and take a roll of the dice on the money side. That's the thinking. I mean, I don't know. And there's also me and Stephanie wanted to do a smaller project between Die and what we do next. And we thought, okay, we could do a mini, I guess, but this feels more like it. No, this is, if we're going to do something smaller, let's do it. Stephanie, what was your perspective on it though?
I think for me, it's always a question of is it interesting enough? Like not really in a way of it's not about the money. It's about what I can learn about it. And for me, I knew at that moment I needed to learn something about storytelling and sketching, like having crisper lines, working on environment, and I knew I really needed that. So this was this project for me. This was the main point of this project for me.
Yeah.
And also doing.
What's the difference for you as an artist, Stephanie, of doing 100 pages in a single book versus doing 20 issues of 22 pages a month, right? Like, are you using different muscles, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely, because when I'm doing the monthlies, I'm writing over on the joy that brings me the feedbacks, because I'm that kind of person that reads the feedbacks. I shouldn't, but I do. And I don't have that, so I have to work differently, find more joy in the simple fact of drawing and finding way of painting and telling the story than finding the joy in knowing that a lot of people are reading the book. It's really very, very different. Honestly, I know now that I prefer the monthlies, but I'm very proud we did this. But also in a way, it looks a bit more like the kind of project we do in France. Like I started my career in France doing BD, and BD is 46 or 54 pages. It used to be, because of the folding paper thing, but now it can be anything. So I started with the 54 kind of projects. So it looked a bit like this, and I kind of forgot how long that could be. Like I'm very glad we did it, and it's really a very beautiful book, but it was very long.
Is it more challenging to get all the way through 100-page story than it is a 22-page stories, if that makes sense? Like in terms of your ability to sort of keep your interest level all the way through the project and to keep the page turns going and the storytelling going.
For me, my main problem is that I am a perfectionist, and as long as the project is not finished, I'm gonna like go on the pages as much as I can and go back to it, because over 100 pages, when you start, is not the same place as where you finish, artistically speaking. So I will want to go back on the first pages that I started with, and then go back on the last pages, and then go back everywhere. So like if I have less time, I can stop myself sooner.
Makes
There's a
sense.
joke. One way I was showing some of Stephanie's pages to a friend of mine, and he said, and then I showed him some more later, and said, "Oh, so I thought she was finished." Yeah, I don't know. When is the sky finished? And that's kind of how it is with Stephanie. Is that no, it's always going to be process.
Yeah. And how about you, Kieron? Like in terms of how you write and structure a thing, I'm assuming, I don't know for a fact, but I'm assuming that you wrote the whole script for this all the way through. You weren't changing things as pages came in, which I believe you would do with a project like Die. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you see, like so I'm doing obviously Power Fantasy with Casper at the moment. So seeing how Casper is approaching the pages is changing the next issue. You know, oh, you can do that. I'll do this. I mean, Stephanie are of course in a more mature relationship. Like, you know, we've worked on like 20 issues, and they were all 24, 25 page issues. They were all slightly oversized. So I sort of got a cadence for her. You know, I've worked with Stephanie enough to know what I think will work. But I wrote the whole thing. Like I've handed I got a habit of sending artists scripts on January the 1st. So like Wicked Divine was January the 1st. Die was January the 1st. The whole of this was January the 1st. Ludicrous is January the 1st, but that didn't turn out as well. Actually, in sales and artistically endeavor, it was something I'm very proud of. So like, I knew it quite well, and that's kind of what I wanted, because it's like I didn't need to worry about Stephanie as much as then, and I knew there'd always be a conversation. Like I set stuff up, and Stephanie I mean, some of the, and then of course I rewrote stuff. I mean, my favorite example is this is Stephanie's brain. We've got a gang called the Dogs in there, and Stephanie comes back with the designs, and they've got these enormous like raven plague masks. Yeah. And I'm like, this is great, Stephanie. Like, what were you thinking? It's I just kind of like plague masks, and it's like, yeah, but they're called the Dogs, Stephanie. It's like, oh yeah. And then of course I turn it into, because the theme of the book, spoilers, is a failure to communicate, or rather an impossibility of communication. So they're called the Dogs. They wear plague masks. The lead character has no idea why, and you can sum up the whole book in that sentence. So something that was just kind of Stephanie's imagination got folded back into the book and made into theme, and that's kind of part of it. And I know Stephanie well enough that I'm going to create places for her to play, you know, and I want her to play, and then I'll integrate. And yeah, there's a bit in Die example I always use. There was a bit around issue 9 where I gave 3 descriptions of what a setting could be. We could set it, because I did all the research into the Brontes, so we could either set it here in Vidopolis, we could set it here in the Philosopher's Isle, 2 bits from the Brontes Juvenalia, or here in a completely separate bit. Pick which one you like, and we'll build from there. You know what I mean? As in, or you know, and so that's kind of, it's setting Stephanie problems and allowing to play, because she's somebody who has imagination and wants to play. And at the same time, you know, I want to firm hold to the story, but the execution is very much the place where she can go for it, I guess. So there's several questions I've sort of answered there in that kind of, I trust Stephanie to play, you know what I mean? So that was the main sort of thinking. But also, like, it did allow me to look at the whole kind of story in one go, and that changes the structure. I mean, in fact, we added 12 pages to it, because I realized I got an editor, Andy Curry, to read the script at one point, and I felt it needed those 12 pages, but I needed another set of eyes to argue for it. And it's the bit where the characters are all inside. It's the fun and games time, basically, when they're inside, and it's all very, the cat metaphor becomes very clear. And that was originally like a couple of page montage, you know. And that, no, you want the fun, because that's, otherwise it doesn't feel like a tragedy. It was that kind of thing. So seeing the whole thing made me realize, okay, this is where I need to basically beg Stephanie to do some more work. Yeah. And she did. So
yeah. When you're plotting out an OGN like this, how much do you guys talk it out ahead of time?
Did we talk this out at all? Because
no.
with Die we do. Like we had a Die summit, like, you know, we got together, we sketched and we argued, and argued's not the right word, talk. But this, I think I just had a sort of vision, because it's a simple short story. You know what I mean? There's 3 women, there's the 2 giants, there's this gang, and there's these wolves. You know, they're all the cast. It's a very few parts. And how did I even pitch it to you? Was it like, because obviously it's a COVID era book. Like, I had an idea for something else I was talking about, like a story set in a graveyard. And then I never actually developed that idea.
I don't really remember. Like the way I remember it, like I get the full script.
Yeah. It is that kind of like, I think I just vaguely pitched the idea and then I just wrote it.
Yeah, I just trust you.
Yeah, it's nice. Honestly, it's nice that, you know, I was describing earlier, I basically just trust Stephanie. Stephanie kind of trusts me, which is nice. You know, it's you know, I when I write a script, I'm kind of, I would love to see what Stephanie does with this. Like, one of my standard bits of advice, there's 2 parts of script. Scripts is architecture, as in just the facts, you know, this panel, yada yada yada, and also script is love letter, to inspire and woo and make, you know, I think this will please you. You know, and that's kind of inspire the artist to their best work. So like, there's definitely with my close collaborators, the Scritches love letter, and this is kind of like, I think Stephanie's have great fun drawing these giants and this post-apocalypse scene and all the rain and these people ending up in masks and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's
It was
what would I
really
like to see
fun.
Stephanie draw? Like every month
And
with Dan Mower. Sorry.
I remember when you sent me the script and I started thinking about the giants. I was maybe already in Japan or like about to go to Japan. At some point, I was stuck in Yokohama, and I went to like a department store, and there was like a huge Ultraman section. And I was looking at the like the villains from Ultraman. I was like, I think I have an idea. I sent you like, would you mind like the giant heavily inspired by like a Showa era from Japan? It's like, yeah, sure.
It's funny actually. I was chatting to a critic recently, and he mentioned an Ultraman influence, and I'd forgotten that you were explicitly riffing on that. But yeah, I can see that. As in, it's not in the plot level, because in my head it was kind of like a little bit the Kirby, the Celestials. There's also like the Iron Giant. In America, it's the Iron Giant. In the UK, it's the Iron Man, but not the movie. The Ted Hughes series of stories, kid stories. There's a little that vibe in there because I remember it's one of these kind of evocative memories as a kid. It's very awful and alien and stately. You know, and love. I said it's a story about love across a chasm, and the idea of like not being able to really understand someone. And it's a COVID era book. It was inspired by me being stuck in the house with my cats and just sort of staring at them and thinking how weird and magical it is. These two species who have no idea what's really going on with each other have found a way to cohabit. And and it's a story about humans as cats, this giant as a human, but not in a creepy way, in a kind of like, no, they found a way to sort of try to communicate despite not having any idea what the other person's doing. And that's what the book's about. And it's a very simple, it's much like, it's deliberately elegant. I was trying to make it elegant. And okay, for me it's elegant. I haven't got 8 million pages about the Brontes, but that was kind of the core idea.
Yeah. Stephanie, do you have pets of your own?
Oh no, I travel too much. I'm a pet auntie. But my mother has a dog. Like I cuddle once a year, but it's good.
Yeah, I liked the pet metaphor quite a bit. And I liked that it didn't really like happen until, I don't know, about a third of the way into the story, right? Like it took a while for it to get there. And I guess I was wondering if it was intentional from the jump, that you knew that was what the metaphor.
Yeah. I mean, like the game. Shall we say? Yeah. Yeah. Also, all the way. I mean, when I was writing it, it was okay. This is the story about like the core idea is, humans as cats. That's the story. And I found, because I wrote a bit of this before. My first cat. In fact, I've only ever had rescue cats. And they're always twitchy and they're nervous, and especially my first one, Lemon. Like Lemon was very twitchy, but she was trying to be loved, and it was very difficult for her to be close to people. And I remember going to my brother's house, and my brother has these 3 cats, these 3 enormous cats, these enormous like balls of meat who'll be picked up and thrown around and lie on you. And it's this kind of, oh yeah, this is what happens when a cat isn't afraid, but has not been treated badly. And I found myself thinking about people I know who've been traumatized in a way which has made it really hard for them. And there's a bit of that there. I think the idea, and Laurie's a character who's suffered rejection and trauma, and is clearly like, she's a feral cat, metaphorically speaking. So like all it was there. I mean, the structures that it comes in at the end, and ideally in my head, the audience know before Laurie knows, because it's almost like a romantic comedy. Like, the idea that, the character knows, no, he's in love with you. That's why he's acting weird towards you. In this, and so, and you're sort of screaming at Laurie, so for God's sake, the cat, he's just trying to protect you. You think, the audience should know that slightly before Laurie knows. And there's the moment of like, oh, I love him. Or, which of course becomes a tragedy because I wrote it. Does that make sense? So it was always there, but it's kind of like this is what, I think the words novum, the core idea of the story was that, and everything else became about how can you best express this idea of these humans of different levels of trusting, becoming to trust this alien who has their best who's trying to have their best intentions, despite not really knowing what's going on either. And of course, it's also a book about mystery. We don't know what the giant. We never tell, and it's that's very unfashionable at the moment. People are very into the lore of it. As in, no, you're not ever going to know. This is a book about mysteries and living with it. And I've sort of been reading a load of Le Guin recently, or rereading rather. And I think we had how Le Guin structures some stuff and how those kind of things feel slightly bigger and are left to be thought about. And that's kind of one of the influences. I kind of wanted the book to people walk away and cheer it over. Like, what was the giant doing? And I've got an answer. So I'm not just like, I've got an answer for it all, but I'm certainly not going to tell people because that's not what the story's about. Because life is kind of about going through and not understanding, living with this huge gap of knowledge around us and finding peace and making the leap of faith that is love. That's kind of what the book's about.
Yeah. Did you have that answer from the beginning of the story, or did you discover it as you were writing it?
As in the ending?
Well, no, I mean like where the giants come from, like.
What's going
on? Yeah.
What's going on was discovered. And that kind of like the basic structure of the story is one of the ones that downloaded almost entirely very quickly. It's one of those kind of, if this is true, this is true, this is true, this is true. Final image is this. But the execution in terms of where should we set? Me and Stephanie talked a lot about where is it set, and it becomes it's quite fable-y, as in it's not where is it set. It's somewhere in Europe, maybe, or maybe America. It's this everything is got. Even the disappearance is trying to create the vibe of. It's not like a zombie apocalypse. It's not like any of those. It's something a bit odd. Is it a rapture event? It could be, but this is a weird rapture. You know what I mean? Like all of it is got that sort of fable heart of it. While at the same time, it's having a much more realistic core as well. So that's the bit that was discovered. But the basic shape of how the story would go, from world, giant center, antagonistic relationship with the giants, friendly relationship with the giants, at least partially, discovery, what the other giants up to, sad denouement, and final understanding. That structure was there, but all the details were discovered. I think that's the best way of putting it. And that's actually the great thing about writing an OGN, to go back to the previous question, is in some way Stephanie could look at the whole art. I could write the whole story and go, oh no, that's wrong. And if you've got a problem with issue 1 and you're writing issue 5, it's too late. Unless you write 5 issues in advance, which you probably should. I don't.
I asked
I say what I've occasionally I occasionally think I'm going to manage it, but I don't regularly do. Like I'm certainly not. Go back to the Power Fantasy briefly. Like I kept saying, I'll write to the end of the arc because I've got it all planned to issue 16, and then it becomes something else. But it's like, no, I just want to see want to see what Casper brings, because Casper does so much every issue. Writing a bit ahead of him means that I can, I can respond, so it becomes more conversational rather than extended series of love letters, which is always a bit cold. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, well, that gets back to the initial thing you were talking about collaboration, and it strikes me that serialized comics are one of the purest forms of collaboration, maybe, that they literally change and mutate as you do them. And I don't think that that's true in television, for example, right? Like, I'm pretty sure that when they go into that writer's room, they're figuring out what the season looks like already, and then they're writing to that, rather than, oh, we discovered this thing in the middle that changes it all,
Because also there is so much at stake. Like for a while, at least for a certain amount of number, it's only Kieron and I and the editor. And after that, barely more people.
It's one of the interesting things about comics is all comics are dubbed. Like something that people, I will always change my script after seeing what Stephanie has drawn. So in other words, and that can be changing, and that can be for practical reasons, but it's also for artistic reasons. So like there's all, like that's the basics. It's one of the things, and I know there's some writers who actually never change a word, and I think that's a bit weird. Actually, who am I to judge? But like, and that's how because I could change all the dialogue entirely, and you would never know. And that's how collaborative it is. It's like, I've written the script is like the start of a conversation, even the dialogue, and Stephanie comes with her riff, and I do a riff back. It's like the dueling banjos. In that kind of way.
Now,
so
is this
not dueling?
Is this equally as true in your mainstream comics work when you're doing something for Marvel? Or is this something that is more likely to occur in creator-owned work?
I would say it's always true. Actually, you're always going to be dubbing but like the dubbing is more likely to be negative. About which I mean, it's like the fact you haven't had a chance to build a relationship with the artist as much. I mean, quite often, when it's good, you do, and sometimes you immediately click. But it's more like, oh no, they've gone this way, and now this isn't clear, so I need to add a caption to make sure the story carries. So it's more functional. And that's occasionally a good thing because they've gone another way and made something else really cool, and then I can now pick up with the caption or a bit of extra dialogue or whatever. You know what I mean? So it can be additive, but it's not the same kind of waltz. Well, it's not the tango. We're not doing ballroom dancing. It's more like it becomes a more practical thing. Whilst this is more art thing.
It strikes me too that at least sometimes on the mainstream work, you don't know who your collaborator is until it's assigned by the editor.
Yeah. As like you say, scripts is a love letter. There's very few love letters written to whom it may concern. You know what I mean? Like, so to write a love letter, you need to know what inspires the artist. So like you do the you can do the architectural side, but even then you're kind of guessing what can the artist do. You end up writing safer if you're writing for an artist you don't know. It's like, okay, I know most artists can handle a 5-panel page, stuff like that. You end up writing to the mean rather than the specific. Which is, I mean, and it worked. I mean, there's a robust ways of doing it, but you are playing it safe.
Yeah. I mean, mainstream comics as well, it strikes me, are, largely an industrial thing. Maybe that's overstating it, but it's a machine, and that next issue must come out on the date that they said that it's coming out. Unlike with creator-owned work, you can push a book a couple of weeks if something needs to change. It's not ideal, but creators absolutely do.
Yeah, they do.
I have so many stories about that. It's just, as an artist, you have to be honest with the editor when you cannot do work. And I have worked with a lot of writers, and not often they will late. But when that happens, I'm a slow painter. I'm very fast with cover, with very slow with pages. And once I was working on I was supposed to be working on a issue of Spider-Man, and it was the same time as the NYCC in, I don't remember. And time was passing. I met my editors at New York. They were all like, it's gonna be good. It's like, it's only 4 weeks left, and I'm not the fastest person in the world. And suddenly there were only 12 days left, and I cannot do a full issues in 12 days. And so they took the issue from me, and they gave me another issue. Which I did with like a longer than that. But some artists can do like a comic in 12 days. Like that totally blows my mind, honestly. Like I'm very happy they exist. But what I mean is, like, when you work for mainstream, you don't know with whom you're going to work. And sometimes it just changes at the last moment. And you have to make it work.
I would flip. It's like, I think all that, obviously, everything Stephanie's true. But one of the interesting things, Brian, what you were talking about, and you talk about the industrial, and I'm talking about the collaborating art, there's the same tools. It's just they're slightly different goals. You know what I mean? It's one of the strengths of comics as team comics like this means that you can work in an industrial mode that you are trying to produce to a deadline and things will happen. But use the same techniques in indie teams like this to create something that's about the improvisational and interplay of art. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same strength of the medium that I want to put anyone who's listening, the caveat is in group-based comics. Like, it's a very different thing when you've got a sole cartoonist. But one of the strengths of actually having these small bands is that, yes, you can do it like the commerce of the mainstream industry, or you can use the same powers that allow you to do that to your own thing. It was one of the things when I was doing WicDiv, a lot of the techniques I learned in WicDiv and we're using it, like the whole issue made from previous issues, that kind of stuff. That was born of stuff I'd learned by pulling stuff together at Marvel at my ass to try to save something, but we were turning it towards like something a very different kind of goal. And that's what we're talking about, why comics, that kind of stuff. That, there's a real magic there, like kind of, can you pull this off and why? Anyway.
Yeah, it just, I mean, it strikes me that it's a very different creative experience. And, I don't know, because I've never experienced if it's as satisfying, right? As a creative endeavor, to work in a group of people who are all making books with the same characters, and then somebody over here does something that totally derails what your story potential is, right? Like, it happens, especially if you're writing something as complex as like the X-Men comics, where there's 16 books in the line, right? And they all kind of have to match together, sort of.
Kind of. Yeah. We'll try. It's like they're just different. One of the things I like about comics is it's a different job. Like, I went back to Marvel. Like, I went back for Marvel for two reasons. One, it looked quite fun. I thought, I saw what John did with the Krakoa books. I thought, oh, you can do actual really good books at Marvel again. And two, I was burnt out after Die. I didn't have it in my head. For various reasons. This is even before COVID, and COVID doubled down on that. I can't do another book like Die immediately. So that was part of the reason. So it's different kind of stretches, and there's definitely bits of bits of work for hire, which is great to do. Like, but the real work's the real work. It's that kind of like, if you were going to destroy if you were going to keep books, they're the create your own books. There's one of my standalines. What would Jack Kirby do? And it's make it something new. And what you do as a creator is what's important. So, like, in the ultimate level, doing your own stuff is where the satisfaction is. That's the reason why I got into the medium, because of mainly create your own work.
Sure.
And I love all the stuff, and I love doing it, and it's fun that you can do both. Because the other way I put it is, I couldn't do 4 books like Die a month. It's that kind of like, I could do Die and then do something lighter. I don't throw in a work for hire book, because for me it's always easier, because I do so much of my create your own books, which I shouldn't. That's how I work. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
Like, if you have to choose, it's create your own, but like, I don't have to choose. But I've got no plans to do work for hire at the moment. It's that kind of, no, I haven't got enough I'm too old. I've got too much stuff I got to do now.
Yeah, and when we get to the money part of it, at the end of the day, I always think that comics creators are better off owning their work, because then you can control, at least to some degree, whether or not it stays in print, how it stays in print. Those are important things to make a career over the long haul. Being able to see those spines on the shelf. I was talking to, it doesn't matter who I was talking to, but it was a mainstream writer, and he was kind of bitching and moaning about how all of his early stuff wasn't in print anymore. And this is a pretty famous guy, right? And yeah, I don't make any money off these things that I used to do, and that I thought, when I was writing them in my 30s, I thought was going to pay for me well into my 70s, and now I have to like keep scrambling for these new work for hire gigs. It seems like a frustrating place to be in, when you don't actually control your actual work anymore.
Yeah, it's tricky. Like, Stephanie, of course, you're quite good for hiring, and you move around projects. Like, but for me, it's like, I definitely had some frustration, because Marvel is, of the big two, DC's the one who seems to better keep their trades in print. And I was aware I was doing long form work at Marvel, designed for an audience, and a perennial audience quite often. And like, Young Avengers first trade was out of print by the time the third trade came out. Like, I was aware that, oh yeah, I'm fighting a battle Marvel has no interest in fighting. So even in the short term, it was frustrating. And that's why, I think it's definitely with Marvel. I always think of that stuff as, if there's any more money after the thing, it's bonus free money. Whilst of course the business model in most indie comics is, you'll get paid properly eventually. Even for me, Phonogram absolutely made us good money eventually. But did I get any money on Phonogram until 2009? I think it was 2009 I started getting money from Phonogram. No, so I'd written like for 5 years before I got any money from Phonogram.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. I mean,
Yeah,
it's the downside of creator-owned work. I have spoken to many writers who are in the image stable, I guess I would say, who are constantly talking about, I don't make any money off this because I'm giving my artist all the money so that they produce the best work that they can, and I'll get money from it someday eventually. And it's a lucky place to be in, that you're at a point in your career that you can do that. But it's a frustrating place, I think, as well.
It is. Well, there's a variety. Okay, we're getting close to the nuts and bolts in that way. But I think, I don't. If I was going to say nothing, I don't think people would walk away with something that's untrue. In some ways, the writers are going, okay, it's better for the artist to be paid and be comfortable than, because I could do, I can. In my case, I've got, my previous stuff has done pretty well, so I can actually sit, I don't need to be paid immediately, and also I could go and write something else for money. It's that kind of the thing. Well, Stephanie needs to just do the book. And they say, like, when I'm back in the day with Phonogram, which of course was a much more marginal book, it was how can I get Jamie? How can I make sure Jamie gets money? That was always the kind of, and that was the thing that kept on running for like the entire time of Phonogram. And of course, the only, Wick did, which was a very big hit, was the opposite problem. Is like, no, we've got a hit. How can we not mess this up?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You never know. I mean, and that's to say why I didn't do any. That's why I said I couldn't do a book after Die. I didn't have the brain for it. But it's still fun. Even like I'm doing Power Fantasy in the monthly, and like us sort of think, okay, what can we do in issue 6 to be fun, as a kind of conversation around the book. All this, you have the plus is you have complete control. The downside is you have complete control.
Sure. Yeah. No, and yeah, I agree.
It's
Stuffing.
how can I explain that? Money is important, but as an artist, like, I only have my own experience, of course, but when I started, it was very, very difficult, and for a very long time, money was really a big, big issue. And doing comics, working for mainstream comics, to compare to working for indie comics and being the owner of your creator-owned book. The thing is, working for like Marvel, DC, or whatever, it gives you easy money in a way. Like, when money hasn't been easy for a very, very long time, it's difficult to let that go and literally put everything you've worked for, and also the trust that editors have given you for a very long time, and tell them, okay, I need to take a step back because right now I'm focusing on something that might not work. It's not a very easy step to make.
Yeah.
I have said it several times. I wouldn't have made it with anybody else than Kieron. Or certainly, like, I don't like to talk in absolute, but we had worked before. I know the way he presents his work to the artists. I really love that. It's very there's a lot of image in what he writes. It's very literal. I don't know how to say it. Like, it's a bit like reading a book, and I really love that because it brings a lot of image. Like, I know not every artist like to work this way. This is the way I like to work, and like all the conditions for me were reunited to like it was the right place for me, the right moment to try to do that. But it's very, very difficult to actually let a comfortable career go because artist careers are not very often comfortable.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's like, even and it's really, I was talking to another artist about another book I was hoping to do for Image. Still does have an artist, actually. So anyone out there? But explicitly, I'd arranged for them to actually, okay, I've managed to work out ways you get your actual work for hire page rate. So you are absolutely going to get the money you would have worked elsewhere, and they still didn't want to do it because it may go away after 6 weeks, and they had a really good ongoing gig, and they didn't want to like lose the certainty. So even if in the short term they got the same money, it wasn't worth the risk for them, which makes perfect. You know what I mean? Like, I get that. So what's that? It's a roll of the dice because it's generally worked out really well for us. As you said, it's in the long term. If you can bet on yourself, it generally is better. I mean, there's a reason. There's a reason why people are hiring you for work for hire work. It's because you're good. They think your brain and your talent can make money for the corporation. And I say that and I sound like I think it's a bad thing, and I don't. I think they want to exploit you. That's literally what the job is. You're trying to create value. And if that's true, can you work out a way to do it and own it and be? I know it's not even about ownership, about control. Control, I think, is the real word. And it's a huge risk. You know what I mean? Like, and
It is.
one of my standard lines is, artists are promiscuous, writers are slutty.
Right.
Like, and that thing, no, I know. I say artists are monogamous, writers are slutty. So artists have to use one project, so they're committed to it. Whilst
Right.
writers can get around a bit, you know, and that changes the risk. It's just a much bigger risk for an artist. And I think, like, as a writer,
It's
I've
true.
always got that in my head. Always try,
Yeah.
how can I make sure the artist gets paid? How can
Yeah.
I make, you know, that, because I'm aware that they're taking a big bet on me
Yeah.
as much as the book.
Yeah. Well, and as you say, I mean, you probably can't write 4 dies at a time,
Yeah.
but you can write 4 comics in a month,
Yeah.
right?
Well, at least I used to be able to. I'm a bit old now.
But yes, but that's the standard, right? Is that the
Yeah,
writer is writing a lot of stuff, and the artist has to commit to one thing, and it's and then the other part of it obviously is, you use the word a bet, and it is a bet. I mean, for every successful Image comic that we can name, I can name 10 that failed miserably, that nobody made any money off of whatsoever, and that's, you can mess your career up. You can. If you make the wrong steps and the wrong moves,
Yeah, it's petrifying.
Yeah,
but it's also
now,
sorry,
now having
it's
said
also
that,
really
I don't think that for almost anyone the right move is to be doing mainstream superhero comics, because it's so limiting, and it's very, very, very hard to stand out, and it's very, very hard to build your own career. It's not like it was 30 years ago, when if you were a stylist, your style alone could carry you. You could, I remember the first time I saw Todd McFarlane's art, for example, in some issue of Infinity Incorporated or something, and I'm like, whoa, this guy is like, what is he doing with the page layouts and things like that? And he was able to parlay it into a thing, but you can't do that today, because it's not that there's 4 X-Men comics anymore. There's 16 X-Men comics, right? And it's so much harder to stand out in that kind of a scrum, I guess might be the word.
It's all with the faster, the accelerated shipping. It's always like, there's different people. There's always fill-in artists. It's hard for people to create a sense of ownership.
Yeah.
All those things. It's just hard. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I'm tilting. Is it hard for writers? It's hard for writers in a different way. I think it's kind of, comparing from when I broke in, you could get a bit more rope, and it's quite hard for the current generation of writers to stand out, because they're not given enough runway to actually be writers. And if you're rebooting every few issues, you've got to create a new entry point. These are, this is a thing that we talked about earlier, the OGN as it's shaping. Serialized miniseries is also a distorting shape, and it's quite hard on writers on lots of levels. So it's hard. Like, but I was just thinking about remember the Kirkman manifesto back in the day. He was, and I think people often like, I mean, I might be paraphrasing. It's been a long time ago, but people always paraphrased it wrong. Like they don't think they quite got what Kirkman was saying. In that kind of, it was try to get to a position where you can make the leap. And of course, that's literally what Image Comics was. Image Comics was, Todd and chums going, we'd rather bet on ourselves. And I think we're in a position where we can do it right now. And that's the career management thing of choosing, okay, when's the time to do my book? What should my book be? What do I, and what's the art and commerce intersection there? You know what I mean? I know.
Yeah. Well, and if we're going to talk about Robert had a number of failures before he finally found a book that eventually found that audience. And it wasn't like Walking Dead didn't find the audience from issue 1. I mean, it took, I want to say, 15, 16 issues before it started actually becoming a thing. I mean, Invincible, and then, of course, it became a television show, etc. And that's a whole different world. But you can't ever plan on that.
It's like, it's always like, I find this fascinating because this is a much larger conversation. Just because it's weird, because once we call them giants, it's quite a separate thing because it's such a smaller project. It's the idea of here's this thing that people can come into and buy. I mean, Stephanie, but like the way I described it to Stephanie is it's a small hardback book. It doesn't have a ribbon, but in my head it's got a ribbon, and it's found by a girl in the library who needs it desperately as a teenager. It's that kind of book. And that is coming from a different place of something like the Power Fantasy or even Die or like Wictive, which is meant to be this big ongoing pop event. Whilst Giants is here as a singular statement, which is that changes the math a bit. I'm intrigued by it.
Do you think that you guys could have done Giants if you hadn't already done Die? as a team and sort of established yourselves as a team?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. There's an alternate time. I'm tilting my head. There's probably a way. You know what I mean? Like, I'd say that in a kind of like, you never know. But I think this skews the odds a bit in terms of, hey, the people who, it's like me and Jamie did an OGN. You know, people would probably turn up for that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like, it's so, you know, Ed and Sean's, you know, so many great criminal books, and now they do primarily working only in OGN. It
Yeah.
is the kind of like an audience who knows they're going to buy the book anyway will turn up to see what you do. I think the
Yeah.
real risk with Giants wasn't the OGN. It was the kind of, here's a new IP and it's slightly different to what you might be expecting. I said IP, please shoot me. You know what I mean? Here's a story.
I knew what you meant, though. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's a story. It's not a dice sequel. Here's a story you don't know. Come with us. We'll entertain. That's the risk. As in, do you like us that much?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think,
yeah.
I mean, I can say from my side as a retailer, we're certainly able to make a larger bet on an established team that we know what's going on than I would have if this was the very first thing that you two would ever work together on.
Yeah,
you know,
it's like my pause was if me and Stephanie did it off the back of Journey into Mystery, there might have been a chance. You know what I mean? Like, but the OGN market, you know what I mean? Like, it has to have a thing the retailers know you for to help that recognition. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you know, that's the exception, but we obviously didn't.
Kind of true, but we only did one issue of Journey into Mystery.
Yeah, but
together.
the covers.
Yeah,
we could, you know, like, and also Journey Mystery was a hot book. It's like, kind of, if you jump off a hot book, there's more chance of you know.
It was such a good book.
Yeah. Hot book, you know what I mean? Quotation marks. It's all relative. You know, it's all relative.
I know what you mean. Hey, so Stephanie, when you get a script, a fully formed script like this, where it's not as much of a conversation as a serialized comic is, right? What's your approach to starting to lay out the pages? Do you read the whole script a couple of times and then start working, or do you, as you're reading along, start sketching things out? Like, where does your stirring the pot, I guess, start to come in the process?
No, I usually read it once first. I try to do it in one go. And usually after that I start sketching yeah, because I want to be able to give Kieron something to chew on like as soon as possible. So yeah, like for me, as soon as the script is written, you know, it's like the part of the conversation that comes from Kieron is done, it's my turn, you know, and then we can come back and forth.
Yeah,
it's been quite
a different kind of conversation, though, right? That he's conversed, and then it's sort of, I don't know. I was going to say it's like writing a letter rather than having conversation.
He writes words for me, like usually at the beginning of the script. You know?
Yeah. Almost all my scripts start with a personalized letter to the artist talking about what's going on and where we're at. And like the script, like my scripts tend to be quite conversational with an artist who likes conversation. You know, like that's the thing. You always, this comes back to love letters, as in what does the artist like? And with Stephanie is, let's talk, especially with like Die, or actually this as well. We're creating a world on the page. So like whilst we've had conversations separately, there's also, hey, here's all the stuff I've researched. And then actually the other thing is the bottom of if it gets this long, there's a too long didn't read line I add. And kind of like, if you want to skip all this, here's what I actually need. But like, this is stuff you may find useful.
I like this.
Yeah.
But I sent you a PDF with the sketches for Giants, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we have we have the things that you sent to Stephanie, so we can put them up anytime you want. If you wanna.
If you want.
Oh yeah, I love Stephanie's roughs.
These ones are surprisingly clear, to be fair.
Yeah, that's nice. And so let's go back one, Ben. Yeah, thanks. So on a page like this, in your script, Kieran, have you broken this out into 5 panels? Whatever this is on this page.
I think there's a
He
5-panel one.
usually does.
Yeah. Okay.
You can see that like there is a small number at the bottom, at the top left of the page.
Yep.
And this is the number. Like I count sometimes the number of panels and I write it.
Interesting. Okay.
Actually,
keep going,
that's something I should do. Jamie like asks for this. I have page like 7, 5 panels at the top. So at the top of the page, I tell him how many panels are on the page.
And how often, Stephanie, do you need to, or do you want to change that number? And because when you're trying to figure it out, like you're like, oh no, this would work better if it was 6 panels.
It's very, very rare. It happens once in a while, but it's very rare.
Yeah.
Kieran, do you do your own sketches so that you can see how a page is flowing, or is it all completely in your brain?
It's mostly in my head brain. If I'm sketching or getting paperwork out, it's normally I'm trying something really hard. The harder it is, the more likely it becomes crafts. Like some of the bits in Wictive when we were doing really experimental stuff, that's where I'll get the papers out. With this, it's kind of like no, because I know I can sort of see how Stephanie's going to solve the problem, and it's the question of creating space. And some of it is. I'm pausing. I'm thinking of any exceptions. No, mostly I'm just sort of thinking because I know the sort of thing Stephanie will do, and I know Stephanie like, for example, especially after now, I know Stephanie likes long. In my head, Stephanie uses the long shot more than my brain does. So I start writing a bit. Stephanie likes doing a long shot on an emotional moment. With someone like Jamie would actually like the bottom panel here, for example. That's a classic Stephanie. Whilst like when it was someone like Jamie, for example, I write a lot of tight shots. And that's so. What do you choose to show? I've actually just called up the script so I could actually read some of it. Do you want to should we go back to which page? Oh, page 4.
I was thinking about page 2 because the page 2 actually doesn't look like at all like the sketch. Like there is nothing.
Yeah, if you compare these to the actual comic, you'll see it's just very different.
Well, yeah, this one is mostly fully trees, like in the comic.
Yeah, it's like a street, and this is much more of a bigger area. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like that's a church at the end of the block or something there, where there's nothing like that in the.
Yeah, because at first I was thinking about maybe having a kind of German neighborhood, like and in the end it didn't really work, so I scratched that.
Yeah.
And I think I've seen. I was browsing paintings and. I don't remember which illustration I've seen. I was like, oh, because maybe I should do the tree white. Like it doesn't make sense, but it's nice,
Right.
Can you go to the next panel? Actually, page 4.
Go to page. Yeah.
My panel description page 4, panel 1, and we cut to later. She's walking down her street, maybe away from us, dressed in warm clothes with a backpack on her back. She's carrying the hockey stick already. She is careful. I originally had this on the previous page as a small panel, but thought you would like the splash page to introduce the isolation. If you'd rather this be a 5-panel, page, move it back a page. And that's an interesting example of like just me architecturally going, hey, I've solved the problem this way. If you want, knock it back one.
Yeah.
And in the end, Stephanie actually was fine with the 6-panel page.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Now, Stephanie, are you all pen and paper at this point, or is this digital, or?
No, I usually sketch either on my iPad or my computer. For a main reason is on paper I cannot see the end of the the panel. Like I need to have a physical way to stop my pen from drawing. Like it's better for composition.
This page is nothing like the original one, is it? Well, this is completely different.
Yeah, well, kind of.
This is why the roughs. This is literally, Oh, this is quite close.
It is.
Love it.
Yeah,
My roughs are very rough.
yeah.
And I usually kind of prefer to keep it double. Like I'm always very curious about the people who can draw very very intricate like rough work. uh I like to be able to change, like I know what I want to put, and I know how I want to compose my page, but if I put too much information, I get lost in the information in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what you're trying to accomplish for yourself as a creator.
Mm-mm.
Uh, whether it's the gesture that's the important part, or whether it's the detail. And I know different artists who think about it in completely different ways. Jeffrey Brown, for example, he would think, looking at his cartooning, would do very simple cartoony like thumbnails, but his thumbnails are like more detailed than his final artwork almost.
Oh, really?
Like they've got just these little teeny, like he's just gone in there and just like, okay, I'm gonna really render the shit out of this. Whereas here it's much more about sort of how does the page flow,
Yeah,
where's the
definitely.
gesture, what's the emotion.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
That page, just a note, like Stephanie, like trust all the artists I work with who create their own books are really demanding on themselves, and Stephanie's always trying to push things. Like, and I think, and I look at this page, I see Stephanie taking some more manga influence, Stephanie trying to do more kineticism. Like she was quite hard on, and she didn't feel her work's very kinetic in that kind of way in Die. Is that fair, Stephanie? And you were trying to work your action storytelling here,
Yeah.
and I think that you do really well. This is a really nice sequence.
Yeah, I agree. So, Kieran, are you seeing this stuff in progress, or are you not seeing it until the finished pages?
Stephanie normally lobs the PDF of all the roughs to me. Actually, I think we did 2 separate loads in this, and I give notes and I'll go through and kind of mostly practical ones, as in, hey, this might be a problem here, or this is off script, or actually this is really cool. We can go further if you like. So it's all kind of just more broad, seeing a problem that's coming and kind of trying to get ahead of it. It's funny, like some of these are so
I like that page a lot. I really like the composition there. That's really nice.
Stephanie loves tall panels. That's the other one. She's a big, like, really tall page with panels. That's another.
Yeah, I do. I think I like the way that you cannot really embrace them in one go. You have to go through the panel, like starting from the top and go, and so you can tell several stories in one panel.
Yeah, I'd say this. Especially the traveling, spaces, distance, and time. The magic of weird comics. This script. So I'm looking at the script here. Here, actually, I've got a map to actually give the map of the whole. I gave a map in the script to sort of say, okay, this is where the suburbs are. This is where the mall is. This is where the Jade. But I did that kind of. So the big picture layout of the area, which is like not something people could ever see, because people wouldn't be able to piece it together. I think, but so Stephanie knows it. That's world building stuff. But without being too detailed. It's not like I did a full kind of detailed map, but I did give a kind of, hey, this is the orientation we're talking about.
And I find it interesting too that third panel, her face is in shadow like that, but on the final, the painted page, that shadow is completely gone.
Yeah, because the first time the panel, page just before this one, the next page, was not the same frame like at the beginning. I changed it.
I see. Okay.
So the giant was closer.
I see.
Yeah, I think one of my notes was you've made the giants too close to them, as in we need a little bit more deniability that they can't see the giant. That kind of. I think that was one of my notes there.
Yeah.
That's great. I really even like that in roughs.
Yeah. No, I love seeing stuff like this.
Yeah.
I really do. This is really good.
Yeah.
It's funny to see them like this now.
Yeah, it's honestly, these feel like baby photos. Scripts are kind of, it's like scripts don't feel like comics. Scripts are just weird artifacts. This feels like, photos of something in the womb.
Yeah.
Sometimes just one picture will be more detailed than the other. Usually it's because I didn't know how to draw it, so I had to push it a bit more. But
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, if it's not details, because I know already what I'm gonna do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of roughs are the artist solving problems. I always think. Like, so the
Mm,
second you see what the solution is, you don't need to draw anymore. You know.
Yep.
very true.
Makes sense.
I'm laughing because like the on the former page, the just the one before, like the panels tree. I don't know how
Past
I
before,
send
you've
you
just given
that.
up, haven't you?
Like, yeah, well, it's gonna happen.
Actually, the only problem of working like this is occasionally, like something is wrong and I don't realize because if you've gone completely rough, I won't know the characters in the wrong order or something.
No.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, which is we solve it down the line, Um, but like it's not like you can see what's going on that way.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I do like because I think doodles like this is kind of like it's quite heartening in terms of like that kind of draw an owl meme. Which is just kind of like first you draw the eyes, then you draw the effing owl, and it's a bit like that in terms of the skip from the 3 lines we've got here to what Stephanie does, which is a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, it's just very funny to see them right now.
Yeah. No, this is great though, and especially if as I'm following along with the book, and I see how and where you made the changes.
Yeah,
It's interesting, particularly particularly in terms of color. Well, I think we've got a sense of these thumbnails. So why don't we pull that off?
yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
I must say, anyone watching this, the author should get their copy and follow it along with their book because it's kind of
Yeah,
like a little. It's
yeah,
it's a little extra kind of like director's commentary almost. I guess what we're doing here.
almost. Yeah, yeah.
That's true.
When you so when you do the painting, how are you painting? Are you doing that in Photoshop or something similar?
Yep.
Yeah. So
Everything.
there's no actual paint involved. Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
How are you, because I'm not an artist, and so this is a hard question for me to really formulate. How do you make the decision going from those roughs to the painted work of what the color is and where you're drawing the eye, right? Because like, for example, and a number of those pages in your rough, there's shadow here, there's or when you see the wolf, that
Mhm.
first time, and kind of the last one we saw, it was very clearly delineated in the panel, but on the painted page where it is, it's much more shadowy and dark. So how do you, does that make sense as a question? I'm not even phrasing it right.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Honestly, there is no right answer. It's all about the dramaturgy.
Mm, mhm, mhm,
It's
mhm.
exactly like when you working on color on a movie, it changes everything once you like put the right ambience. And that's the thing. Like usually, I will cut the book in several sequences and assign color scheme
Mhm.
to this sequence and like work a bit more on this or that depending on where I want the eye to go. But mostly that's it. Finding the right ambience for each scene. We were talking with Kieran about like going into a very bleak world before the appearance of giants. And this is what I'm focusing on the first part of the comic. And then we get to Giant, and Giant are very vivid, in their own way. And they bring something more to the reality. And all the scene inside the lair of the giant, it's also very vivid. It's very different from everything else. um this is how I work mostly, and also a lot with shadows and lights, because my
Mhm.
first school was photograph school. So I have a tendency, which I'm trying to get out, to work a lot with shadows and light. And I realize that sometimes, well, once it's printed, it's a bit too dark. Like it's very
Mm.
nice on screen, but once it's printed, it could be a bit more like a bit more easy to read with a bit less shadows. So that's also what I was trying to work on this book.
Do you like print out your own copy at home just
I
to?
should,
Oh, okay.
but I don't.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Like having a good printer. I have a printer, but I have to go to like a real printer, like a guy who has a shop who
Yeah.
prints things for money.
Yeah.
And I think I should do that.
Did you because I didn't think to ask this because we were talking about other stuff. Did you go to school? You said you went some for photography. Did you
Mhm.
also go to school for comics art?
Yeah. Oh
But
well,
comics specifically, or just painting in general?
no, not at all. I was in so the name has changed, but I formerly l'École des Arts Déco de Strasbourg. It's a very famous school for illustration. But unfortunately, I was a very bad student. I wasn't bad at art. I was bad at being a student. So I skipped most of my sequential art classes, like which I'm very regretful for now. But I learned a lot there, but not about sequential art. I learned how to take a critic mostly, and I think it's very very useful as an artist. No, most of the thing I know now, I know through different forum. I like was a guest in like a very very long time ago, and from the thing I read, I learned a lot while doing it. You know, that maybe I would have saved myself sometimes if I wouldn't have skipped all of those classes.
Yeah. How long does it take you to do your layouts? Are you doing those quickly? Are you doing more than a page of layout a day?
Oh, just the layout. You mean the sketches?
Yeah, the sketches. Yeah,
No, the sketches. I try to wrap them in a week usually. Uh,
a week for
for
not the
like
whole book. No.
for like a monthly issue.
Okay.
You know,
So
usually.
say 4 pages a day, roughly 4 or 5 pages a day.
Yeah, I usually take one day to do all the just the panels, you know, only the panels, and then like find a good way to make the space circulate between the panels, and then put images in it, and sometimes change the paneling. That's usually what I do.
Mm-hmm. And then when you go to the next step, I'm assuming that there's a step where you're penciling the page, where you're working the form out a lot more. You're not going straight to painting, right? You're not going layout to
Well,
paint.
I kind of do.
Interesting. Okay.
Oh
Interesting.
yeah.
No, there is no, what you had before is the step just before the black and white. So I'm going through a layer of black and white and then put a color over it. But the black and white is basically that's it.
Yeah. It's interesting. Stephanie occasionally does some pencil stages, but they're like she occasionally does something in a slightly different style. I think she occasionally plays with doing something a bit specific, but she kind of for most of the work. Actually, we did talk about doing it all in pencils, a more semi-traditional style, and we sort of decided actually no, for a for a standalone OGN after die, it should be at least in a comparable style to die. We didn't make such a that this came to like what would retailers or readers support. The idea of like doing something that was aesthetically different, but aesthetically in the same language. Anyway, sorry, Stephanie.
No, I was thinking about. I was rereading Die a few days ago, and I was going through the Bronte issues, and there is the whole 10 pages maybe sequence which is only in pencils. I was like, oh, that's actually nice. We could do that.
Yeah.
So how long? Okay, so if you're doing, let's say, 4 or 5 pages of layouts a day, when you go and do the black and white stage, are you doing a page a day, or is it taking you longer than a day to accomplish that?
I'm trying to do a page a day. Yes.
Okay. And then the painting step is that a similar amount of time or longer?
No, that's the painting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you know when I said earlier, when is the sky finished? This is the problem you're bumping into here, Brian. It all kind of merges together.
Sure.
Like this is like the stages aren't solid. It's like it's like Stephanie's like the ocean. I describe it as collaborate. And these are kind of her methodology. She works on the page. She builds up layers. She takes down layers. She adds things. She removes things, and she moves to a different page. You know, there's a lot of. Eventually, kind of finishes something to a point. Then she'll come back 5 weeks later to do some more on it. Like it sounds like no, and it's a really fluid way she works.
Sure.
And it's overall, it's we say basically 8 weeks an issue. That's kind of what we plan. In practice, it hasn't been because we've both had a weird last couple of years.
Yeah, that's true.
8 weeks an issue would be a good kind of safe-ish argument. Used to say 6 weeks, but we were kind of lying about that.
Yeah. And did you map a similar thing to the OGN? In other words, this is effectively 5 issues, so it's 40 weeks
We
roughly.
tried.
Mhm.
Yeah, we did it on the book on the slow burn. Like we did it without a formal editor, so we didn't have anyone doing the. Because it says it's a post-COVID book. We both had a lot on. You know, I've got a 3-year-old in January. Stephanie had a lot on in various reasons. So it's kind of like it will get done when it gets done. Like we had a schedule and we tried to it broadly, but we blew the schedule.
Yeah.
But then it was all done and we just released it. You know, that was kind of the plan. Is that fair, Stephanie?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
totally fair. Like,
And when does Clayton come in to start doing the lettering? Is that after the whole book is done, or is it as pages are getting finished?
As the whole book, because the whole book was kind of done in one go. Like it's that kind of we waited because making him redo stuff seemed unfair, especially for an OGM which on the slow boil.
Yeah.
And also he kind of wants to see the finished aesthetics before making his choices, and that we can do it in that way. We chose to do it in that way. We told him early on that, hey, Clayton, do you want to do another book? Basically, and he said yes. And actually, that was the biggest problem of our deadline slipping, is that it kind of made basically we had to keep on telling Clayton, oh no, we won't have the book ready yet. So it's that kind of like, in other words, that kind of him leaving space for it was the problem. And and I hope it wasn't a major problem as it was okay in the end. He fitted in when he could afterwards, but that kind of that we had the slow boil meant it wasn't something he could slip into his schedule as easy as he would like. You know, I know we would like to do for him. That was the main problem with the slow boil. But yeah, it's like we've both worked. We worked on Journey to Mystery. We since then Clayton's littered almost all of my career own work. So again, he's somebody else I'm very comfortable with. You know, as in we've got a rhythm there, and he works very well with artists. And Stephanie's comfortable with him as far as I know. You know, yeah.
I wonder when it comes to some of the mechanical parts of lettering, maybe not mechanical is the wrong word, but sort of the more technical things. Like, in other words, if you've got narrative captions and one choice could have been to do them in cursive. There's like 5 or 6 different ways you could do that. Are you, as the writer or as the artist, going, this is what we think you should do, Clayton? Or is you just going, you're the professional who knows this side of the business and we just stay the heck out of it?
I think we had this exact issue with the bubbles for the giants, right?
Yeah. The giants. I'm googling to see if I can actually find the because what he normally does is he sends us a bunch of choices. I said, hey, here's 5 options, or like here's 4 options, or for various things. And he analyzes. Okay, we've got a narrative style caption, we've got the individual dialogue, and we also have the giants dialogue, which has to have its own vibe. So he gives us options to them at the top. The giant ones was definitely the biggest battle in terms of trying to work out what was actually landed the joke, because when the giant speaks, it's both meant to be mysterious, as you don't quite know what you say, but it's also him going blah 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 blah. Like it's a joke, so it's got to land as a joke, whilst also speaking of the nature of the giant. So that was the aesthetic problem. The rest was we ended up being quite conservative choices. He gave us some more radical ones, and we ended up with like some very similar font choices to die. It feels similar to that in those ways, I think.
Yeah, but also my finished art is already a bit heavy, compared to people who have very clean line art with like a flat colors, that kind of thing. So I'm very happy with a simple kind of font thing.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
think
because that's not a topic that usually comes up very often.
no.
In like the letters I talk about lettering a fair amount, but not usually like what's the step and the thinking behind it. Yeah, it's a gorgeous book. I mean, I don't know. I think I really think that your art, Stephanie, has grown quite a bit between Die and this.
Yeah.
It's brighter, and it's yeah, I like it quite a bit. I really like this book. I really
Thank
did
you.
like this book. So yeah.
And then for me as an artist, it's very important to keep growing and keep, being aware of whatever is happening in the art world. It's a it's a small issue to have. Very fortunate to only have that kind of thing to think about, but I'm trying to keep on improving. It's very important for me.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I mean you very clearly are. And and Kieran, you're
I'm just ambling along. I'm just happy to be here. I'm just a tiny little one of the little fishes that attach to whale sharks and just hanging on the side, like past these enormous talents, and just grab hold of them. Hold on,
yeah.
until they shake me off.
Yeah. Do you feel like in terms of your writing, do you feel like you're getting more complex as time goes along in terms of like juxtaposing narrative captions and dialogue and juggling multiple things?
Is it like what the actual technique I was using in Giants was an extension of like the techniques I was using in Die. One of the things I was doing in Die was a close first-person narrator. So you got Ash narrating, but one of the things we were doing there was something I did occasionally in Wictive is the interjection of dialogue caption. Sorry, interjection of dialogue with captions. So there's a classic error I think for comic writers to do two parallel things. So the captions are saying one thing and the dialogue is saying another, and you've got to basically go between these two sentences essentially. People's brains don't do that, kids. So what I was trying to do all the way through these books is the conversation. So caption dialogue is actually almost like speech, but or the dialogue is meta commentary over. Sorry, the captions are meta commentary over the dialogue, and it's the back and forth, and it's meant to keep one line of thought rather than two lines of thought.
Yeah.
So that's the technique I know. I'm not doing it again. Actually, I'm lying. I'm doing it in one book. It's a mode of writing I am comfortable with now, which means I probably will only use it limitedly. It works well with Stephanie because Stephanie is somebody who's like her paneling often moves into a more impressionistic space. So I have to do some more lifting in terms of I do more specifics in the dialogue. It's this classic, McLeod stuff. As in, as one person does one thing, the other person picks up. So since we need more specifics there than I did, for example, with Jamie, I do more, and it's a technique designed for that. And also, I'm really interested in interiority. This is kind of when I took this technique and when I took it back to Marvel, and I basically all of Immortal X-Men was me doing Die style close first person narrator interjected into obviously it's a lighter book, but that was the technique. But I said it's not in the power fantasy though. You know what I mean? It's like the second I've done, it's an old Alan Moore thing, but the second you've done something a few times, it's probably leave that alone for a bit.
Right.
I think it's a useful technique, but it's I don't want to do it again. Or rather not lean on it. Is my writing getting more complex? I don't know. I don't think so. I think my problem has never not been. My problem has never been a lack of complexity. It's almost the opposite. As in, I think if I was to describe Giants, what makes me proud of it is it doesn't get mugged. Die could have been a very clean story. Die could have been a clean story about six people dealing with their childhood trauma and how their lives have gone awry through the metaphor of externalizing the interiority into a fantasy world. That's a really elegant, it could have been beautiful. But through the entire history of the RPG and the Brontes, and I had to do it all.
Sure.
elegant. You know what I mean? Like that's what I do.
Yeah.
Giants doesn't do that. It was like, this is a story about humans as cats.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is a machine about that idea. And I've always been good at like building machines around an idea, but my ideas are quite often a bit too big to fit in the space available. So what I think I'm it's, you know, Stephanie, I said earlier, Stephanie's working on her action. I was trying to work on my precision in terms of like, do I really need this? And in some ways that's a risk because I've had a really good career based on not doing that. You know, like, but I am aspiring towards elegance as much as I can now. That's kind of why I'm
Well, it seems like also with an OGN, it's much more important to kind of simplify down.
Yeah, especially a short OGN.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, what's important? Yes, I do. It's a fable. That's kind of what Diet is. Sorry, Giants is a fable in that kind of way. So it needs to have a simplicity, but that which is not a lack of complexity is not the same as being simplicity is not unsophisticated. You know, these are kind of like these aren't. You know, simplicity can be profound. That in some ways that's what cartooning is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's what I'm kind of wrestling with. As in, I think there's some pretty good techniques I'm good at, but like I question, you know, I question what are they right? You know what I mean? Like just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you should do it again.
Sure. How much time do you think about like the page turns and things like that? Like the mechanical aspect of reading a comic book?
I think that's the profound and that's the fundamental grammar of comic writing. It's one of these things that like I've got, you know, I'm a WGA member. I've written a few screenplays and got paid for it. And like, my God, it's much easier than comics. Like, because you're not because you're not as you're part of the process. And you know, if I did what I did in a comic script, everyone else would murder me. That I would never work again. The director would break my neck. You know, and rightly so because it's not the job. And in it's like I could write a scene and not worry about where people are sitting around a table. You know, like literally in comics, all I'm doing is basically being comics is basically a very complicated dinner party arranger. Like you think, okay, that person's sitting next to that person, so that person can speak first in this panel, then this person can do a follow-up line, but this character can't speak at all unless I change everything. You know, and that's all the way through. So no, yes, you think about that. And that's what you mean by thinking visually. People think, oh, you've got to have a good punching image. That's not what thinking visually means. Thinking visually is literally who's sitting where. So yeah, you think about page turns. You're thinking about like what image is the biggest on the page and why.
And when you're
the thing I don't do anymore, I used to obsess over the entire issue. Now I just write.
Yeah.
And then I kind of look at what I've got and go, because it's like it's either going to be a page turn or not. And I'll say, oh, my big beats on the page turn. I mean, it's like, okay, no, if they're not, what is an important beat? And what can I just push? Like, okay, can I expand this scene by a page and this makes everything after it a page turn? And can I cut here? So I find it easier now to just write amorphously across the whole project and then shape it to my page turns. So like, I've always got in my mind, because I know, because I'm in my head, I know, you know, if I've got a good beat and the scene is 2 pages, the next reveal is going to be a page turn. So once you've got in the rhythm, it automatically fits in there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And when you're writing for mainstream where you don't know where your page turn actually is that a challenge to accomplish that thing?
I'm just gonna die here a while. Yeah.
I can say as an artist, it's very frustrating to not know when.
Sure.
For me, for example, I like to cut the panels in symmetry most of the time, or at least try to. And I cannot do that with mainstream. With Marvel, it's impossible to know where it finishes.
There's a bit like when I was working in the Axe office, there was a standard sort of flat plan. So you knew where the adverts were as standard. You had things like the double page spread, which it was the title page. And therefore, you know, after double page spread, there will be the equivalent to a page turn. You know what I mean? And then you can do things like forcing page turns by, okay, I'll add a double page spread with panels along the bottom. And therefore, I know the next page is a reveal. You know, you can do things by being uncompromising with the script and forcing their hand. In actual fact, no. And also there's like not relevant mostly to the shop, but digitally everything's a page turn as well. You've always got that in your head. Yeah, every panel's a page turn if you're reading in page by view. In reality, I'm mainly thinking about the trade in that kind of like, I'll do the best I can. I'll be thinking about what I can control. And then I just have to give up. Like
Yeah.
it's literally by definition beyond my control. You know,
Same.
and even in the trades, occasionally Marvels do stuff like not having it. If Marvel, you know, not having the spacer, then having the whole issue, all the page turns to back to front. That's just beyond my control, and that's why you go out to create your own because you want to have page turns. I sound like I'm joking, but no, like with the Power Fantasy, the idea you sit down with a flat plan and go, okay, big double page prep, we do this, that, bang, extra. Well, like we entered, there's a page in Giants we had at the end, just that single page. He loved me, and that of course is a big beat, but that was added late in terms of no, we want to add extra pages to the comic, but we also want to have the page turn. So adding the black page gives us buys us the page turn and forces it. Like we did it in Wickdiv, or interstitials in Wickdiv. I added it one basically anytime I wanted to force a page turn. You know, not the only reason I stress, but it was certainly one of them.
I really love to work on double page spreads too. Sometimes I will force them to, as you remember. Like, I did that in our next book, but I did that I think on issue 1, was it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the presentation of all the kids. It's like you were like, oh, you should do like
Yeah, the first issue with like Die, I wrote. This is one of the bits like this is about learning. Like the first issue of Die, there's a bit where they're introducing the kids and the dice get handed out, and I wrote it as a 6-panel grid or something like that. You know what I mean? And then it
That
comes
was
back
fun.
with these aggressive diagonal slashes down the page, and I was like, I realized I'm never going to write a grid for this woman ever again. Like the idea, like like I could write a grid. I'm not going to get a grid, am I?
That would never have worked.
Never gonna have. You know what I mean? But that's the learning. Like you go, oh no, it's not. Why would you put the seed does not follow a grid? You know, and that's you learn. This is okay. Now I get it. This is what Stephanie likes. Let's lean into it.
No, that makes so much sense. That makes so much sense.
Just laugh.
So are you guys working on something else together?
Yeah, it's tricky because
Yeah,
we haven't really announced it, but we're sort of telling people anyway. In that we're like there's some we put out a poster for Giants, which I believe a load of shops got like image released, and on the back there's like the dies, like the range of die books. At the bottom of that says Die will return in 2025 in like quite small letters. So Die will return in 2025.
Okay.
Yeah,
Are you guys well into it now at this point, or
issue 2?
There are things.
Yeah, like the issue 1's all drawn. Like we'll get a fish in the can. We'll work out. We take our time a bit, and of course, Stephanie and I will have a call. I think next week we'll work out the schedule hard. But yeah, it's like should be at some point this year. It's really good. Like honestly, like it's Stephanie's leveled up again. That kind of a device to create these kind of. When I made up the concept of Die, it was kind of in my head. A bit like Phonogram was, as if Phonogram was a device really for me to talk about music across time. So all the minis were kind of like, if Phonogram was more of a hit, I would have carried on doing that for the rest of my life. Because, it's always have a different angle on what I'm thinking about music now. Like my dad left me a mixtape after he died, but that's a Phonogram story. All that kind of stuff. And Die in some ways is about RPGs, or games rather. So it's a broad device. We've got some really cool stories to tell. So yeah, that'll be fun when we get to announce. And there's also more RPG stuff as well for people who go for RRDs, so the other side of the medium as well.
Yeah. That's neat. Are Stephanie, are you like kind of set in your head that you want to just keep working with KIERON, or are there other projects that you'd like to do outside of
How dare you?
I'm not talking to anybody else.
Sorry, Stephanie, please.
No, a project like Die is a big project. I have no visibility for the next couple of years at least. So right now, don't ask me to think about anything else. I'm still doing covers because this is not something I can let go. Apparently, less. Of course, but when I'm getting tired, like if one day I get tired of doing comics, I can do illustration. It's more money than comics, but comics are more funny.
Yeah. Also, Stephanie will. I mean, like, I hope Stephanie will do her own stories eventually. You know what I mean? It's like Jamie.
Yeah.
I spent 15 years trying to make Jamie do his own stories, whilst also giving him scripts to stop him doing his own stories.
No,
but,
I really want you to be fair. The
Yeah.
thing is, I'm very soon I will be 50, and once I get 50, I will be tired. I want to write. And maybe I am telling myself stories in telling myself it's less tiring. But
Yeah. Well, I think one day you definitely, I mean, you definitely should start. It's like I only want to work with artists who want to do their own stories. It's like Casper as well. I think he should be doing, you know what I mean? Because they're the kind of
mhm,
artists I love. The storytellers, you know, like
yeah. Yeah, I think I should at some point. I have stories I know I want to tell. But right now, when I started doing comics, it was a while ago. I was writing my own stories. When I was doing French comics, BD, and at that moment, I was not good at writing or drawing, not as much as I wanted to anyway. And I was like, okay, I have to leave one or the other and work very, very well on at becoming a decent artist or a decent writer, and then switch back to the other. And I got used to being addicted to progress. I want to get better. I always want to get better. So there is no end. But still, it's very tiring. So maybe once I reach like maybe 55, you know, it will happen someday.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, this has been a load of fun. I feel like we just keep talking for another hour, but I don't want to take all you guys' times up. So let's go to the last question, which, like the first, is the same everywhere. This is a series of interviews. We've been doing it for 10 years now. We're at like 250 interviews. It's
oof,
insane
Oh
how many
wow.
people I've talked to about making comics. And so there are a number of viewers who want to make comics, who and who I hear from who say, but I don't think I'm good enough, or I don't know where to start, or just sort of that trepidation that
Oh,
people
oh.
get. So if there was a piece of advice that you were to give to someone who would like to make comics, but is not sure of themselves enough to actually do it, what might that piece of advice be? This can be something physical and practical. This can be something emotional. This can be something spiritual about it. But what
Oh.
what might you say to this young, maybe not so young student out there who's like, I want to do this, but I don't know. I don't know.
I will tell you one thing. Like some people think that one day they will wake up and they will have that genius idea they've been waiting for all their life. It doesn't work. Like you have to work every day. Like while you're waiting to be a genius, some people are starting from way, way further than you and like doing the thing just day after day, little by little, and someday they're gonna be further than you. Like you have to do it every day, even just a bit, you know?
yeah. It's just tough. I mean, it's like well, the advice Stephanie has is just a good one. There's an element of like you have to prioritize your craft in some way. So what that looks like can differ for people, but it is an element of you just got to go to the gym. It's kind of that simple. Like there's not really a shortcut there. A question about people that are worried about not being good enough. You're not good enough. You suck. Like, but, like
True.
no one's good enough is the thing. You'll go to your Alan Moore does not think he's good enough. And Alan Moore's right. No one's good enough because we're wrestling with eternal truths,
Hmm.
And so you have to sort of forgive yourself. You have to get and understand that this is the process. And it's so this is the I found myself thinking about this AI. And my daughter's like 3 now, and she's no, not 3 yet, but like she was just assembling. We're in a museum, and she was assembling stuff with bits of paper and glue. And she says, something like, "Sticking's fun," like this, and it's that kind of like. I found myself thinking that that's just such a fundamental thing of how the world has divorced ourselves from creativity, and that the idea that no, it's the point is doing it. This is why
Yeah.
the AI art stuff is so depressing, as in you're getting pictures, but you're not really getting anything. The point is the doing. And in some ways, that's what the falling of love with is being a comics is. So it really comes down to doing it and doing it badly, and don't not care about doing it badly because you'll learn.
Mhm.
Because this is one of the things, especially for writers, I'd strongly recommend a writer do a comic badly. As in, whatever. I mean, I never actually drew anything, but I use montage, I use photo comics, Fumetti. I did that, as well as talking of artists into drawing it. And I learned a lot from just doing that and seeing, oh, that was bad. But also, like, you know, describe that, you know, writing for an artist is writing for an artist and their strengths and weaknesses. If you write for yourself, who have a lot, you know, who has no strengths, okay, what can I do, Kieron Gillen, to make a comic look functional? And that's really teaching you a lot right there. And you know, I've got classic examples, you know, dinosaur comics. You know, you can do this, and you should do that. And if you really mean, oh no, actually, what I want to do is write, I don't know, Spider-Man, or just write these big adventure comics. It's like, well, you don't really want to write comics, do you? You know what I mean? This is a very specific sort of comics, and to write all the people. There's probably exceptions, but the people who are really, I think, are good at writing comics love comics. They just love comics, and that's the thing. You know, what if you can't do what you want to your end goal? What can you do with what you have right here, right now? I mean, I remember when I first met Al Ewing, he was handing out his little A4 sheets folded up into like a 16-panel mini zine at Bristol Comic Con, which was like there was a Ultimate Future Shock of the big twist comics in 2000 AD, and every page was a new cliche twist, but increasingly over that kind of stuff. And he just like his very aggressive cartooning in terms of like just this very bold, but also back of a textbook doodle, you know, and just effing do it. And you've learned so much by doing it, much more than just dreaming. Because the second it's on a page, you go, oh no, that's bad. And then, okay, why is it bad? Or why could it be good? And you've got to love that process. Because honestly, like when writing your stuff is good, it's really good. Like you feel like God. Like it really, and it's beautiful. And then it can be bad as well. You know, it's just got to go to the gym.
Yeah, and also you shouldn't be afraid to ask for people to read or watch, look at what you did. You know, nobody learns from scratch. We
Yeah.
need critics. Critics are very hard on self-esteem, but you need to learn to take that also. And you also have to respect people who don't draw. Like as an artist, sometimes I will meet other artists who don't want to listen to anybody else than like more famous artists, you know, or just published artists. But the thing is, as a creator, I don't sell my book to other artists. Like I'm very happy if they buy it, but they are not my main readers. Like and this is gonna be the point. Your work, like most artists, we don't buy books. Like we have so many of. Look at your library behind you. Like your shelves full of books. There is no room anymore. It's the same at that place. We don't buy books. Like
Yeah, I'm not
sometimes
going to show you the rest of the room.
people give us books all the time, and we get cons. Like we don't buy books. So like the readers are going to be everybody can have like an opinion on your art, and sometimes it's worth something, you know.
Yeah. Three things to throw in, like three exercises about criticism that might find useful. One is when I was coming up, I had to cultivate two sorts of readers in terms of like people I show my stuff to, and there were one group would tell me what's right with the book, and one group would tell me what's wrong with the book. In other words, the people who tell me right are basically your mum, as in they'll just talk about what's good about it, and they're basically they're basically to pat your head and basically feel a bit good about yourself. And the other ones are normally your peers and probably jealous arseholes as well. So, and they're just gonna, and they're mainly, you know what I mean? They'll pick it apart, and you'll get something different. But between the two of them, there's a balanced diet. Second point linked to that one, all criticism is all. There's a line by Oscar Wilde in the front of, I forgot which book, but it's all criticism is autobiography. He puts it as in other words, every critique is really just saying, it's at least partially saying where that person's from. So anything anyone says has to be seen through that filter. So like listen to the critiques, but also listen to the note behind the critique. You know, so you've got to have that kind of, you know, it doesn't reduce it, but it definitely alters it. And it's a really basic exercise as any comic creator. Give your new comic to someone you don't know. No, actually, no, anyone. Just give it to a friend and ask them to tell you the story. As in, tell me what's happening in this comic. And okay, then this guy goes for this door, and then you oh no, he was meant to be coming out of the door, and you know, and just be silent the entire time and listen to it. You will be mortified because that's the kind of fundamental storytelling errors you're making because you're not seeing what's happening. You know what I mean? Like, and you see that all the time early on. And that's a really simple exercise, and it's heartbreaking.
Makes a lot of sense to me. Makes a lot of sense to me. Look, that was great stuff, guys. I really appreciate your time today. Give me a minute here to do a little bit of housekeeping for the thing, and then we'll come back to wrap this up. Hey, how are you? You sitting there at home? You doing okay? Are you having a good Christmas? Are you? Because I know this time of year is really hard for some people. I hope everything's going really well for you, though. If you're sitting at home and you are looking for something to read and looking for someone to, make your life a little brighter and make your life, maybe you're trying to understand the space between us, right? Well, that's what we call them giants is. It's about the space between us. And it's beautiful and it's smart and it's like a fable. It's a really fantastic book. So you should absolutely go and read this. You could certainly buy it from us. There's a button here somewhere, and then there's a thing. Also, if you do buy it from us, you'll get this really awesome signed book plate from the two of them, which is fantastic. It's also a really, really, really nice paper. They did a fantastic job with this one. This is like the nicest book plate we've had, guys. I just want to say that in quite some time. But you don't have to buy it from us. Buy it from your local comic shop. Hell, go to the library and get it. You're gonna really enjoy this book, and you should read it. This is what I'm saying to you. Let's talk about the next couple of shows coming up. The next show that we're having will be roughly 2-3 weeks from now. It's the Kids Club for the club. The book will be Mendel the Mess Up by the great Terry Laban, who has had quite a career in comics. He used to do like Vertigo comics and Fantagraphics comics, and now he's doing middle reader comics for kids. This is quite a good book. Everyone's going to really like this. And then our next adult club, which is roughly a month from now, will be I Heart Skull Crusher. And it's a sports comic, and it's a lot of fun, and it's total chaos. This is a great chaotic book. Everyone's going to love those books. Couple of thank yous I got to make. First and foremost, I must thank my staff. Zoe, Kat, Katie, Max, and Chrissy. I have the best people who work for me, and they literally allow me to sit and have conversations with cartoonists. It is the greatest job in the world. This part of my job. I also do all the paperwork for the store, but that part's no fun at all. But talking to cartoonists and creators about making stuff is such a joy, and I couldn't do it without them. I want to thank Jordan, our producer, who does all the backstage stuff that you guys don't see, but we could not have a show without it. I want to thank Ben, who's been running the show and doing the camera work and stuff like that. I want to thank all the viewers of this. You can certainly click the little heart there and you get all the notifications of the shows going on. Thank you for all the members of the club. It is literally you guys who are keeping not only the store going, but just this whole kind of enterprise where we're bringing good comics and we're talking about good comics with great cartoonists. So we would love your membership if you're up for it. And kind of most importantly, I got to thank all the cartoonists. I got to thank people like Kieran and Stephanie here, because if you guys weren't making comics, I would be sitting in a store full of blank paper. And that would be really fucking depressing. And you give me the thing that just fills my heart full of joy so much. Why comics for me? It's you guys. I thank you so much for doing what you do, and I hope that we will see so much more from you over the decades. I love you guys. I really.
And I think a stationery shop sounds great. Just sell paper.
Honestly, no, I would probably
I don't buy books,
cut my
but
wrist
I buy
with
paper.
blank pages very fast. Yeah. Yeah, they've got to have dreams on them. That's So,
thank you, bro.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time and being with us today. We really, really appreciate it. And everybody, we will talk to you in a couple of weeks. Thank you for watching this episode of the Graphic Novel of the Month Club. If you enjoyed what you were watching, please subscribe and hit that bell up in the top corner. If you enjoyed the books that we're talking about and the creators that we're talking to, every month we pick a brand new book. The staff votes on it. It's a program that helps keep our store alive, and we'd love to have you as a member. You'll get a new book every month. Just follow that URL at the bottom of the screen.